Century 21 at the second half.
Okay, no problem. Well, we're all gonna learn together today. So I just started recording this, so in case we need to refer back, we can. There's brokered loans and then there's correspondent loans. So with brokered loans, what this is this is a loan that is closing in the lender's name. So the lender being whoever you decide is the loan officer to send the loan to, whether it's UWM, EPM, Orion, Flagstar, whatever lender you choose, at all lenders you can broker your loans with. This is where disclosures are sent in that lender's name. So if you send disclosures out to your borrower on the loan that you sent to LoanStream, it's going to say LoanStream as the lender on all documents. UWM specifically, you can tell the difference between a brokered and a correspondent loan there by just looking at the loan number. So when you have a loan in with them, the loan number will start with 1-2 if it's a brokered loan. If it's correspondent, it starts with 1-5. So just a little tip there. So here's a question. Why would we choose to do a brokered loan versus a correspondent loan? Well, one, we know we're only correspondent right now with UWM. But if you have a loan that you're sending to UWM, how do you know the difference if you're going to pick brokered or correspondent? That's what we're going to go over now. So if you have an FHA loan that must be brokered, we are not licensed to be a lender, quote unquote, with FHA. They require a whole lot of extra stuff that we are not doing. So brokered always on FHA loans. Same thing with HELOCs. So HELOCs will always be brokered. And then there's also some other specialty products. I can't really think of any other ones UWM has specifically right now that would make us go brokered. They did used to have a 1% down product where they were the lender giving 2% grant for down payment. They no longer have that. They have a 0% down, but we can do those correspondent. So really the main two that you'll always be brokered on with UWM is FHA loans and HELOCs. Every other lender, if you choose to send a loan to any other lender, it's always brokered. So that makes it a little easier. Questions so far? Dolce, you're muted, but I think you have a question. I see the question on your face.
Yeah, so I'm not understanding that. So it's brokered unless it's FHA. So they're all brokered?
No, so they're brokered. Let me go back to that. All FHA and HELOCs must be brokered.
Okay.
So we're going to go over correspondent in a second with this as well. But if it's a loan going to UWM, the lender that we are actually correspondent, we have correspondent capabilities with in most states. If you have an FHA loan, no matter what state it's in, it always has to be brokered, and same things with HELOCs.
Okay, but UWM, no, because we're correspondent with them.
Even at UWM.
Okay.
Even at UWM, those loans must always be brokered.
Okay.
Good question. Any other questions, anyone? All right, we're gonna keep the train moving. We're gonna talk about the different types of compensation. I said there were 3 different types of compensation. Here's 2 of them. They're both for brokered loans. So on a brokered loan, we have the ability to go lender paid compensation. Sometimes you'll see it abbreviated as LPC. What this means is that the lender is paying you as their originator. They're not just going to give you money. So what they do is they build it into the rate cost for the borrower. So when you're pricing loans, you'll see adjustments. Normally for FICO, LTV, there's going to be an additional one for your compensation. Now with 21st century lending, our compensation really ranges from 2% up to 2.75%, depending on the lender and the state. So let me actually just share this lender list so I can show you, and I'll send this out again with the meeting recap once we have the recording sent. Hang on one second. This isn't. We have to exit out of this real quick. So this is the approved lender list, and this lender list will show, depending on the lender what the comp plan is. So if we had a loan we were sending to Accra, comp is 2.25. It will say the compensation here. Doesn't for this one because we're not fully signed up with them yet. But all other lenders should have a correct comp plan in here. So if you have a question on what that is, you can call the lender, the AE, or price a loan in their system and you'll see it in there, or check the lender list. So there's a few places that you can see it. I'm gonna go back to our slide. There we go. So your lender paid compensation is that flat amount. So it's gonna build that into the rate cost. So for example, if you have a loan, let me show you a live one. Website's a little bit slow this afternoon. We'll use this one. For example, our lender paid comp plan in the state of Indiana is 2%. So this is an FHA loan. Compensation is lender paid. So they're right here. Looking at the pricing, you can see where the adjustments are. There aren't any because it's FHA and they have a good FICO score. But the adjustments would be here, and then you'll see the compensation amount, 2%. It's built
Holly,
in
are
to the
you show-
cost.
Are you showing us what you're looking at?
Yeah, is it not showing?
No.
Thanks for letting me know. Let me try to fix this again. How about now?
Nope.
I've never had this problem before. Can you see something?
Yes, I can see. Yes, there you go. The
Now we
UWM.
can see something. Okay, good. All right, thank you for that. So, as I was saying, over here is the pricing breakdown box. This is where you would see the adjustments. This person happens to have a good FICO score, so we aren't, let me zoom in a little bit for you. Oh, not giving me the arrow over. All right, there it is. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to see. So in here, it's showing us the base price, final price after your adjustments, which again, this guy doesn't have any, our compensation of 2%, and then the actual final price for this with my comp in there. So realistically, I'd be looking more at this rate, 6.25, paying back 1.476, then there's my comp, so the borrower is just paying 0.524, and that includes my full 2% compensation. Make sense? Any questions? We're gonna go over a few more of these
Perfect.
examples too.
Thank you.
Okay, let me try to pull this presentation over, because now my screen's a little weird. Do you see the presentation or do you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We'll just use this one then. Maybe. I think I just need to restart this computer. That's okay. Okay, so. For. Brokered loan pricing, we have lender paid compensation as the option that we just talked about and that I just showed you. And then we also have the option to do borrower paid compensation. Does anyone know what that is?
It's where they get a lower rate, but then they pay more at closing.
Possibly, yes, that's one way. You can also give them the same rate and give them more credit back, but yes, keep thinking like that. That's perfect. I gotta try to get this fixed. I can't do a slide where it's on the opposite screen. This is driving me crazy. Okay, now we see it. This is exactly what I wanted. Thank you for bearing with me. Goodness. Okay. We're gonna skip through. Okay. So with borrower paid compensation, like you said, the borrower is the one that's paying your compensation. Credit from the rate cannot cover that compensation amount. Now, lender paid comp, we're set at that one comp plan that we have with that lender that I didn't choose, you didn't choose it. It's just what Randy, Keith, Blake, one of those guys set up when we first, more than likely when we first signed up with that specific lender, or if they updated it recently. So if you have someone and you know to win the deal that you can only charge 1.5 points, you can go borrower paid compensation and lower your compensation to 1.5. You don't have to, if I chose a lender where our comp plan is 2.5, I don't have to do lender paid compensation 2.5. I can go borrower paid compensation and charge 2.5 or less, never more. So borrower paid will give you a little flexibility to change that number, give someone a little bit of a deal if you need to. But again, this fee can never be more than whatever our lender paid comp plan is set at. So with lender paid compensation, we're kind of flipping back to that, the one where it's inside of the pricing. Credit from the rate after your compensation has been covered, if you have additional credit for the rate, that can go towards some of the borrower's closing costs. So if you have a bunch of credit from the rate somehow because they chose a higher rate, or maybe we're in a market like 2020 where rates paid back a lot more, it would start to allocate the extra credits down the fees from section A all the way down. So your origination could get covered obviously in the rate, but there would also be ability for processing fee, underwriting fee, credit report, those items to start getting covered with the additional credit from the rate. If we have that, we don't have it in the market right now, but hopefully we see that again soon. So here's just a little example of this. So this was a while ago. Thankfully, rates have come down. 7.526 is the green rate down there on the rate sheet. That is what we call a par rate, where there's no cost, but there's also no credit. How we know that is we look in that middle thicker column there where it says $0. So that rate of 7.526 on the right-hand side, if you look in this pricing breakdown, you'll see our compensation for this particular state is 2.598. So with our comp being this, it's already covered by the credit from the rate. So it's going to show to the borrower as a no compensation loan. They won't have any points. They won't have any line item in section A on the loan estimate for points or for compensation if you lock this loan in and disclose it this way. Here is a little bit different one. So we were talking about if we had a rate with extra credits. So here's an example of that. 7.75 has a credit after my compensation is paid of $3,137.56. So what that would do is that would start to cover the underwriting, processing, wire fee, possibly some of the appraisal. So it's going to allocate those extra credits down to reduce their cash to close in the order of the loan estimate fee items. And then reading this, when you guys go to lock a loan, you should see all of your adjustments. So that's what I was referring to with a pricing breakdown box. So our base price for whatever rate this is paying back just under 2 points. They have a lower FICO, so they're getting dinged for that with 1.25 points. I added a little extra control your price incentive, which we have with UWM, giving me an extra 40 basis points credit. This leaves me with a final price of credit of 1.065. Then I have 2 points in compensation. So the borrower will see points of 0.935. That includes my compensation, but it does not state that on any of the disclosures. Any questions?
That's an adjustment to the rate. That's not obviously the rate they're getting. That's an adjustment to the rate, right?
Yep, exactly. So these are just the adjustments that we're looking at. So it'll show the percentage or the points for it and then the dollars on the right-hand side. And this is what it would look like on a CD. So that same amount, 0.935, it's showing points, $6,000. Origination fee, nothing here borrower paid. It will show on the CD that it's paid by the lender since that was an adjustment. And this amount here. So then those extra credits, if we had extra credits on this one, they would take care of this underwriting fee. You would see over here in the paid by others column, paid by lender or credits with that amount. Well, back to borrower paid compensation, where it's not going to be built into the pricing. The credits on these ones cannot go towards your compensation, but any credits from the rate will go towards closing costs in the same exact way that it would on a lender paid loan if you had extra credits. So we'll see an example. So right here is one where you'll notice there's no adjustment for compensation in here. It's because we're borrower paid, so the borrower is going to pay it, not the lender. So final price, we have a credit of just over $2,000. This is what it will show on the loan estimate in the CD. The credit down here of $2,023.39. Those credits will start to allocate towards those other fees. So here's an example where they also have seller concessions in there. So your seller concessions will start to allocate towards costs from the top of the loan estimate down, same way with the extra rate credit. So this one will show borrower paid compensation. Up here, it'll show your exact percentage in dollar amount in the fee screen, but on the actual loan estimate and closing disclosure, it will just show the dollar amount. So if you go borrower paid compensation, it will show your comp, whatever you have in that origination fee box, that's what will show on your disclosures. We're going to go through an example. Zoomed way too in. So here's an example. This one is lender paid comp. We already looked at this one. We know that for this rate, after my comp, it's going to cost the borrower 0.5 point. If I flipped this to borrower paid compensation and run new pricing, this is going to look like it's off the bat a lower rate. Just like you said, Dolce, this is going to show where you're like, wow, I can give them a 5.75 instead of a 6.25. Yes, but we could give them a 5.75, but then they would have to bring to closing my whatever amount of compensation up to that 2% lender paid compensation for the state. So if I know my borrower is really tight on funds to close, which I'm running into that a lot right now, I might not want to go borrower paid compensation unless I have a lot of credits, like if I have seller credits or agent credits, things like that, that could cover some of my compensation because I know maybe my borrowers are already going to be struggling to pull together the funds for closing costs. I don't want to add an extra $3,800 on to those closing costs if I don't have to. So we can always give it as an option. You can have this rate for $300, but it's going to cost you 2 points extra for my comp, or we could give you 6.5 and you could just pay 0.1 for my compensation. Let's say if it was lender paid. Does that make sense? So we're going to run through another example. I want to look at a correspondent loan because those borrower paid loans that we were just looking through, those are really, really similar to correspondent loans. So here's a correspondent DSCR that's in with UWM right now. And with correspondent loans, anytime you have a correspondent loan in, again, it's that 1.5 starting of the loan number. it's gonna hard code in here borrower paid comp. You don't have to worry about selecting it. It will automatically only show borrower paid. Then say I have this borrower who really wants, they're really rate sensitive and they want a rate under 8. That's great, but maybe I'm not doing this loan for a half point. We could still choose this rate and charge additional on the front end because it's a correspondent loan. We're gonna go over correspondent pricing in a lot more detail next week, so I don't want to confuse you, but just in case you have any correspondent loans coming up this week, I want you to know this is a correct way of seeing it. It will show borrower paid. Most of the time on correspondent loans, you're choosing a rate that covers your comp, just like borrower paid loans. So you can choose 8.25 and you'll make $12,000 because this credit from the rate actually goes to you, not the borrower. They don't see it. They don't know about it. It's your credit. So if you do run into that and you need any help with a correspondent loan in the next week before our next training, come to me. I'm more than happy to help price it out. But it is very similar to these borrower paid ones. We'll look at another one for another example. This was my rush of a pre-approval this weekend where they got an offer accepted and then decided they had cold feet right after the offer was accepted. So this one, I like to also, like a side note, I like to look at all the rates on the rate sheet because you'll see what's called inverted pricing. So you'll notice 6.625 is only $200. You might find a sweet spot in here where like 6.25 costs $18.49, but 6.375 is a worse rate and it's actually costing $700 more. So that's something you always want to look at too, to make sure that you're kind of hitting the sweet spot in pricing. This doesn't make sense for this guy to buy the rate down to save $60 a month in his scenario, but you know, to some people, it could be a bigger difference if you have a bigger loan amount. So with this one, this is pricing as what kind of compensation? Does anyone know? I wish I was in the
Borrower paid?
office, I could give candy. So this is lender paid. This is lender paid because we know this because our compensation is showing in this little adjustment box. So take a look at this. I'm going to price this exact loan out again, but as borrower paid, just so we can see the difference. So we'll remember 6.375, no. 6.625 is a cost of just under $200. Our compensation shows right here. We're going to switch this bad boy over to borrower paid. So that's 6.625 is now not a cost of $200. It's a credit of $51.30. You'll notice that adjustment is gone from over here. So that's why there's that credit. So this credit from the rate, since I'm borrower paid, cannot cover whatever I decide to charge for compensation, but it can cover the rest of the fees, even escrows. It can literally cover, or impound, depending on your state, it can cover every single fee besides your compensation.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now we're gonna move into some different important notes for borrower paid pricing in particular. Does anyone have questions on the two main kinds of, or the two kinds, I should say, of broker loan pricing, borrower paid, lender paid pricing? Any questions on that?
I see that you're in the UWM website. Would we see the same information in Arrive?
Yep, I'm gonna go over Arrive next too. There's lots of systems. So we can do that now. If I could load it. This is the last loan that we looked at in UWM, where we decided 6625 was a good rate for lender paid, just a $200 cost. So we'll go into Arrive, and you don't have to be in a loan to price the loan out. You can price the loan out by just going to the pricing tab up here and then going here and filling out a whole new scenario. It's just like an easy quote or quick pricer, as a lot of the lenders call them. But if you have a loan in, you can go into the products and pricing tab. And then in here, I already priced this, otherwise it would pop up with this screen that's loading right here. So the first thing that you want to do, this is a VA loan, so we'll always want to make sure that we have our correct use type selected for the veteran. And if they're financing or non-finance or exempt from the funding fee, because that's a huge dollar amount, especially on the low loan amount. Once everything's in here correct, you could choose your lenders. I'll just select them all for this. And this is on borrower paid compensation. Mr. Cooper is in here now. Has anyone seen this yet? Has anyone seen Mr. Cooper started pricing in here?
I haven't.
Okay, I haven't seen this either. That's like, that must have just happened today. So VA loans should always really be priced lender paid if you're brokering that loan. Because you can't charge more than 1% unallowable fees, and part of an unallowable fees for some reason is our compensation. Plus title fees and a bunch of other stuff, so you would fail the test and not be able to close that loan. We're gonna go into more detail on that in a few, but just a heads up, VA brokered loans should always be priced lender paid. So another reason why I don't like to do as much training right away with Arrive in pricing is because some of these lenders that we're correspondent with, or the system thinks we're correspondent with, actually shows wrong pricing. So for example, UWM, we're correspondent with them, but we're not correspondent in Indiana. So this is showing me correspondent pricing, which means it's showing me borrower paid pricing. So my comp is not included in here, which is fine because I can do the manual math. But just be cognizant, anytime you see this purple box, just know that that means it's giving you correspondent borrower paid pricing. So you'll want to make sure that that's what you're meaning to select. And you don't think that you're selecting like a lender paid comp plan and quote the borrower a super low rate with no cost, when really that would leave you not making any money on the loan. So for example, on this one, I open up the rates and I want to choose a rate that covers or gets close to my comp. So for example, on this one, 6.625 is going to just be a little bit off by 0.075 from covering my compensation. So I can hit that, apply it. It shows you base price. It'll show the adjustments in here too, just like UWM system did. If it was lender paid, it would also show the compensation here. Even though I selected lender paid, it always shows UWM as borrower paid correspondent pricing. So that's why it's not. So we can just add our own. We can just add our own little adjustment in here by blue rate change box. And we'll say LPC for lender paid comp, 2 points to match their website. And then this leaves me with the exact same rate, the cost of $199.89. And you can add in other adjustments, like if you have control your price points with UWM and you wanted to add a point for credit or however much you wanted, you can add that in there. Want to make sure it's a credit though with a negative sign. And then instead of them costing $200, they can get $866 rate credit that can help cover some of their closing costs. But for this example, we're just gonna do that. So we'll go into pricing. And then we'll just do another scenario in here. We're gonna choose all lenders. We're gonna do a lender paid compensation one. I'll show you how you can really start to view the, we'll price it just like that. That looks good. Okay. You can start to view which lenders it's showing incorrect pricing for because the rate's gonna show you like significantly less. So like for Kind, Mr. Cooper, this is still strange to me. Don't send any loans to Mr. Cooper right now. I don't think that this is supposed to be showing in here. Kind Lending, UWM, Orion. It's all showing that purple box showing correspondent pricing. So that's why you're seeing rates in the sixes. With lender paid compensation, we know that's not what's really showing. When everybody else is in the sevens, mid sevens, high sevens. So for example, if we opened up pricing at Kind, we're like, wow, that rate looks really good, 6.625. You'll see compensation, 0. So I would need to manually add in my compensation again, and then it puts me right in the wheelhouse with the rest of the lenders. So then it makes sense, like, oh, obviously it's not adding compensation for this lender. Whereas we start to go down to, sure, we'll look at UWM with this one, still no compensation. Next. We'll look at EPM. There we go. EPM compensation, 2.25. Okay, now I know it's lender paid, it's giving me correct pricing. So in Arrive, if I chose 7.5, see how it has that credit there? That rate credit can cover some of the closing costs for the borrower. If they wanted a lower rate, they could choose to maybe pay 0.742, $5,691, and buy the rate down to 7 1/8. So we're really looking at
I was
that
calling you back because I missed your
discount
call.
box. Does that help clear anything up?
Okay, yeah. Were you calling it maybe about some real estate or something like that?
Does that help at all?
So
Are there any other
Oh,
questions?
if we chose a 6.625, just,
Oh, yeah.
that is a credit of 2.3, but we can only get 2. So the difference between 2.3 and 2, they could use towards other costs. Is that
Oh,
correct?
This is a cost.
Right.
So the
Yeah, yeah.
6.625
are-
would cost the borrower 2.305 points,
Oh, okay, yeah,
17,667.
I see that. Okay.
But if we look down here, maybe they needed some credits for closing costs. It'll have the negative sign in front of the dollars and the percentage points to show that that's a credit going back to the borrower to help cover those costs. But on lender paid loans, our comp is just whatever this says. Whatever the compensation adjustment shows with that lender.
Okay.
Now, say we were going. This will load. Say we were going borrower paid bill with your same exact question. I'm like, nope, this is a borrower paid loan. I know my comp plan and pretend this is Indiana is only 2 points. If I chose this rate that is paying back 2.639, we have the extra 0.639. That credit starts going towards the borrower's closing costs. It doesn't go towards my comp charge, but it goes towards underwriting fee, funding, processing, appraisal, credit report, just like down the whole list of all the fees, even escrows or impounds, all the way like survey, even whatever we need. And if all the credits aren't used, we can end up with what's called excess rate credit. So we would have to buy the rate down a tiny
Right.
bit more to lessen the credit or add additional charges. Maybe don't do an interest credit, don't skip a month or
Yeah, so,
skip a
it's
month's
tri-state
payment. That way it adds the
and,
extra interest to increase
or
closing
not,
costs to
but
use some of the credits, or
it-
however,
have
maybe they
been
want a better home
opportunities
warranty. I don't
that I
know.
can get you in
Does that
contact.
answer your question though?
What they're gonna
I
do,
think
they're gonna
so.
start an eviction on her. And then
Yep, so the key to this is borrower paid compensation. You can have a credit back of even 3.5 points. The extra 1.5 points credit would just go towards the rest of the fees that the borrower pays, even title fees, stuff like that. Just not your compensation fee. So in this scenario, if this was really their credit, I know my borrower has to bring down payment and my compensation. The rest of the fees are definitely covered. Now, if I was if I was lender paid for the same scenario, my comp's already in there at 2.25. I can choose a rate that costs if they want to buy the rate down. This is the cost for that estimated monthly payment. If they want a no cost loan, I could look at 7.375 where it costs them 1,400, or 7.5 where it's a credit of almost 1,300. So there's a lot of different rate options, but one of the things that I like to do that I'm sure you guys already do is I'll look for the difference in payment. So for example, is it worth buying my rate down? So if I'm at 52.94 and I want to buy my rate down to, I don't want to be in the sevens, I want to be at 6,875. My new monthly payment, principal and interest, would be $5,036. So I know $258 is my savings. So I'll take the added cost of $1,292. Oh, $12,292. Subtract that $1,413. Divide it by 258, which is that monthly savings. So the cost difference, what I do is I take the cost difference between paying for this rate versus this rate, and then divide that by the change of monthly payment, which in this one is 258. This tells me it's going to take me, my borrower, 42 months of paying that lower mortgage payment before they actually start to see a savings after their investment of buying the rate down. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, beautiful. Perfect. Okay, I want to leave the last 15 minutes to answer any questions at all that you guys have when it comes to pricing, or if there's any clarification that you need on the basics of lender paid versus borrower paid pricing. Or when loans should go correspondent versus broker. Hortensia, you've sat through this training like 6 times, so if my voice goes, I'm gonna have you take over.
Actually, I have runny nose, itchy, watery eyes today. I've been sick for 2 weeks. Can't get over it.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening here too. Good Lord. All right. Are we good? Dolce, is there any other questions or anything?
I guess I'm still not quite understanding the difference between brokered and correspondent.
Brokered and correspondent. We're gonna
Mhm.
dive a lot into correspondent next week, but to give you the gist of it, a correspondent loan is really just where our name is on the docs. Our team, Gina and Casey, are the ones actually funding those loans, so they're the ones sending the wires out at closing. But I think the real question probably is like, why would I do that versus just have the lender do it? Like, what difference does it make? And I would say it makes a difference in how you want to structure your compensation. There's more freedom with correspondent loans, you don't have to charge a set amount on each of those files. Like I said, it's only borrower paid compensation, but you have the ability to charge points, like points for the rate, instead of just origination charge. And then credit from the rate goes to you as the loan officer. It doesn't go to the borrower. Now, if you have someone that has like, you pick a rate that's higher with maybe 12 grand in credit, but you're comfortable making only 10,000 on the loan and you want to give the extra 2,000 to your borrower. On correspondent loans, you can choose to give a lender credit of the $2,000 from your 12,000 commission, still make your 10, they get 2. There's just a lot more flexibility. So we're going to do a whole 1-hour training on that next week. I'm just double checking that it is next week. I think it's next week. Just because it's so intricate with all the different. No, that's today. Come on. With all the different options, I guess, really.
It's on
Yep,
the
so next week is
13th.
correspondent. Thank you. So yeah, that's the gist of that. I could go on for an hour. I love correspondent pricing. It's fun because we can do whatever we want with it and change it around. We could charge points in the front end, just make money in the back end. There's a lot of different options. It's not like you're just stuck with the one number that you have to adhere to.
I've been in your class a lot, Holly, your trainings. But every time I get on, there's something that I just learned something more, or it just reiterates what I was thinking. So I enjoy taking your
Well, thank you
trainings.
for being on here, and thank you, Dolce, too, for the questions. I appreciate that because, like I said, I'm not feeling well, and I feel like all over the place today. So your questions helped me a ton. And Hortensia, that's normally you helping me through with all the questions. So I know you're under the weather too. We're just gonna tag team it.
Yeah.
It's just like such a different way of thinking. So
Yeah,
like-
it's correspondent. I feel like you have to totally shift your mind when you start thinking about both of those loans. If you try to learn about both of them, they start meshing together and then nothing makes sense. So, but with these, what market do you mostly work in? Are you mostly in California?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, California.
Okay. I mean, Hortensia, you're in California too. I feel like you do a lot of lender paid compensation loans brokered.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, I mean, depending on your area, do you see a lot of FHA? I know Hortensia, you do.
Yes, there's more FHA in my area, Riverside, Southwest Riverside County.
Okay. What about you, Dolce? Do you see a lot of like conventional?
Mostly conventional, but occasional FHA.
Okay, so the FHA, you're probably gonna be doing what Hortensia does and sticking with lender paid compensation. With those, that's just generally what makes the most sense. Those people don't want to come out of pocket with down payment plus your comp. A lot of times you might run into it, but it'll be most common for lender paid compensation. And then with your conventional loan, since you're in California, we are correspondent eligible on those, just only with UWM right now, even though Arrive likes to tell us we have 12 different lenders with it. Which also, shoot, my bonzo's going off. With the lender list, like I said, I'll send that out with a copy of the training recording. But at the top of it, I did put in that these are the states that we're eligible to lend in across the board. And then these are the states that we're eligible to do correspondent loans in. With whatever lenders we're correspondent with, whenever you have a correspondent loan. Like I said, right now it's UWM. We do have Kind coming soon. I think there's a few others that they're trying to work on. Kind will be the next one though. So if you have loans in California, you can go correspondent as long as it's conventional, VA, USDA, bank statement, DSCR, basically just not a HELOC or FHA. So that little cheat sheet will be here. I'll send this out again, but if anyone has questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm always here. Hortensia, I just got your updated email too, so as soon as I call this agent back, I can call you and we'll just go over it, okay?
Thank you.
Yes, of course. Well, thank you guys for being on today. If you need anything, like I said, please reach out anytime.